We are shooting this clip on Wednesday. You're going to see it probably this weekend. It is the beginning of our NBA 2016-2017 preview with myself and Andre Snellings, who you will see in just a second, because it is once again, it's been a year since Andre and I did our predictions from last season, and we're not going to show you them because they were somewhat great and they were somewhat not so great. Regardless, like I've said, I was just telling Andre off camera a second ago, there's his shining face right there. I was just telling him before, it's funny when you talk about predictions for any sport, especially the NBA, because it's a shot in the dark. It's like the superfecta in horse racing. You're not going to get 1 through 8. Almost anybody's not going to predict it correctly. However, there's some standout teams that need to be talked about. So you're going to see 3 different clips: an NBA Eastern Conference preview, which you're watching right now. You're going to eventually see an NBA Western Conference preview, and then a wild card / 2 or 3 teams who could really shake things up in each conference or either conference heading into the season. So we begin with the Eastern Conference. I have put mine next to Andre's. Andre and I have very similar teams in just a slightly different order. We both agree that the Cleveland Cavaliers are the number 1 seed. I'm going to let Andre take this first because towards the top of it, we all know the Cavs should take the number 1 seed. I don't think we need to go into crazy detail about that. What I'm curious from you, Andre, is Celtics, Raptors, Pistons, Pacers in that order. What made you put the Celtics ahead of the Raptors? What made you put the Pistons ahead of the Pacers?
Yeah, I put the Celtics ahead of the Raptors just because I felt like last year they were right there with the Raptors. Obviously, the Raptors, finished with a slightly better record and made it further in the playoffs. But I just felt like the Celtics were coming together, and by the end of the year, they were right there with the Raptors. And then adding Al Horford, to me, just changed their whole dynamic. It makes what was a weakness of theirs into a strength. And I think he's a big man version of what they already have with kind of their scrappy, talented, but not like obvious scorers at every other position. And so I think the Celtics are going to be the team that takes the step up in the East.
Right. And, first of all, that's obviously some great points made in there. Al Horford joining the team, as you have mentioned, and I've used this term I think in almost every NBA clip with a specific amount of players. It's his portability. It's one of the best coined words I've heard when it came to attributing a certain skill set to a certain player. It's probably one of the most positive words you can attribute to any player in the league. So my reasoning for the Raptors out of the Celtics is simply because I know the Raptors can do it because they have in the past. They did it last year. And they actually almost challenged for the number 1 seed, just given regular season prowess. So my reasoning mostly for the Raptors is I believe that Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan will not shoot nearly as bad as they did as a whole in the playoffs, and I think that they're better in the regular season than they are most other teams during the regular season. So, and by the way, when it comes down to it, if I had to put a win number roughly next to it, I think both these teams are hovering right about 55 wins. Like, if the Celtics are ahead of the Raptors, I don't think it's by a crazy amount of win margin there. So here's my only issue with the Pistons, right? Well, for one, I'm not sure if this changes your rankings at all, but Reggie Jackson, I got an update a second ago saying that he might be out 8 weeks. Which is a little bit of a blow. But my only issue with the Pistons, and I still think they're a playoff team. I still think, actually, did I have them on? Yeah, I think they're a playoff team. I think I had them as the 8 seed. The main problem is that they were a 500 team last year. They actually, in no month last season, were 3 games better or 3 games below 500 record-wise through each month. But if that's what they are as a 500 season team, and the Pacers got better, and the Raptors look better, and the Celtics got better, I don't see how they'll still finish with that same win or with more wins than they did last year, based off the competitiveness of the Eastern Conference.
I can see that. So a couple things about the Pistons. It's interesting. So for one, of the teams that you've mentioned, I think they were the ones that were able to improve the most kind of just organically, just internally. They're built around young players in what was a new system for them. And I think they continuously got better as last season moved along. And I was expecting them just to get better this year based on that. They also made some moves at the end of, where a lot of teams made their moves in the offseason. They brought in Tobias Harris during the season, so I think their team fits into the mold of what Van Gundy likes with the dominant big man in Andre Drummond, and then more combo forwards. They have several of them now. It is a blow that Reggie Jackson might be out for a couple of months.
Right.
The one thing, there's still a month until the season starts. So we're talking about him maybe missing the first month of the season, which isn't good, but I don't think it debilitates the team.
Right. And
one thing I thought was interesting, you asked about my order, and that was the order that I picked. I felt like the Celtics would be better than the Raptors. I felt like the Pistons, should challenge for home court advantage this year. But one thing that's interesting, if you look at the Westgate Las Vegas predictions for over and under that have been kind of getting some run, their win totals suggest my placement. They have the Celtics over and under at 52.5, the Raptors at 50.6. They have the Pistons at 46 wins, the Pacers at 45. So it's not like they're a genius or a definitive factor, but just anytime you see someone else kind of independently come up with what you came up with, it makes you feel a little better.
Right. It definitely gives you a little bit more ammo to the arsenal when you're like, well, what do they know in Vegas? Like, what are they hiding from us, right? I mean, I think, by the way, it's not that I disagree with Vegas often. I actually usually side with the scoresandodds.com and like to look at what people were putting their money on. I think it's very interesting. The 67.5 win total for the Warriors, which we'll save for the Western Conference preview, is slightly high. The highest in history, at least, the highest win total ever made for a over-under in a season. So let's get quickly to the bottom half of that because, not just because I'm a homer, but I believe the Knicks should be around a 500, slightly above 500 team, which should get them at least the 7 or the 8 seed. I would pray. Even if they stay healthy, I think Porzingis is a better player. And I think with Derrick Rose, Brandon Jennings, Courtney Lee, they have improved in so many different ways, at least just by depth and talent. I think it all comes down to Jeff Hornacek. I really do. If his system that he's trying to implement is executed effectively, then they will be a playoff team. If it falls flat on its face, like most of the Knicks head coaches in the past 15 years, or 12 years, I should say, Pat Riley did a good job almost 20 years ago. God, can we get Pat Riley back as our head coach? That would be nice. It's going to be execution. But the interesting one, you put the Bucks as the 8th seed, and while I am extremely excited for Point Tentacumpo, Thon Maker, and what they've brought into that Milwaukee. Actually, the teams that are playing around your geographical location, Milwaukee, Detroit, and the Minnesota Timberwolves are going to be teams to keep an eye on all year long and teams of the League Pass alert. But Chris Middleton's loss from being out for the season for the Bucks was the only reason I didn't put him in. I think I'm overvaluing Chris Middleton, but I also know how really well-rounded of a role player he was for that Bucks team, and I think it's going to be tough for them to find a replacement. I know it's only one guy, but I think as the East got more competitive, that's why I have teams like the Knicks making it above teams like the Bucks.
Yeah, you make a good point as far as the Bucks, especially with Middleton being out. He was their shooter. The Bucks have this very intriguing, interesting team. It's funny that their coach is Jason Kidd because their team looks like a 2016 version of Jason Kidd. They're athletic. They can, they can do all of the things on the court. They can pass, they can rebound. They just can't shoot. And so obviously I do think Middleton's a big loss for them. And because he's gone for the year, it's bigger than Reggie Jackson was for the Pistons. Mm-hmm. So the Bucks was kind of that 8th pick was kind of a swing pick. It could have gone to the Knicks. I noticed neither one of us have Charlotte on there. It could have gone to them.
I know.
I think if you went chalk with Westgate, Charlotte would have been the 8th seed by a half game over the Knicks. And Milwaukee is 5 games back. So I know I was picking them as kind of a dark horse, but I like their athleticism. I like the mismatches they can create with Giannis at the point. And I'm really just looking to see if they take a step forward. Does Jabari Parker continue to progress? Now he's the year after his recovery from his knee injury. Does he bounce back to the player that some people thought should be the number 1 overall pick? And just kind of how does all of this athleticism and mismatch fit in today's NBA, which tends to be a lot more about shooting? I kind of feel like they're going to sneak up the ranks a little bit.
You mentioned Charlotte, by the way, which I'm saving for the wild card clip. So we'll get to that one a lot more in depth because that's another very interesting team to be keeping your eye on. All right, so let's throw up to that graphic one last time for the Eastern Conference. If you want to bet on what we think the 1 through 8 are, you are more than welcome to. If we are wrong, sorry, not sorry. I don't know what to tell you. I'll take a word actually from Chris Liss, who always mentions over at rotowire.com, who you've seen on this platform multiple times for football content. Just because we're saying that this is what it could be, we're taking our best shot given the evidence in front of us. We didn't talk too much about the Hawks and the Wizards, and we do have to get to the Western Conference preview, but at some point, maybe down the road, we'll do some more in-depth with those teams, and maybe they start off. I'd like to revisit these rankings halfway through the year to see if we are geniuses or if the Miami Heat, because of Chief Justice Winslow, are the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, which is just probably not likely at all. Regardless, it was a fun one. Make sure to follow Andre Snellings at Professor DRZ. Check out RotoWire or the hoopslab.rotowire.com for everything you could ever want as a basketball fan. It's absolutely worth taking a look at, where you'll see articles week to week, now sometimes even multiple posts during the week, which is awesome. Live blogging of the Olympic coverage if you want to go back and relive USA's glory. A lot of good stuff over there. Everything's in the description box below. And come back tomorrow, which I think that's when we're scheduling these clips for the Western Conference preview.